1 million casualties. Let that number sink in. 1 million soldiers, dead, wounded, or missing. As 2026 begins, we are witnessing the most high-stakes diplomatic tightrope in modern history. Just days ago, the world felt a surge of optimism. Following a marathon meeting at Mar-a-Lago between President Trump and President Zelensky, reports leaked that a peace deal was 90% finalized. Security guarantees were supposedly locked in, and teams were celebrating. But then, Vladimir Putin stood before his nation on New Year's Eve and didn't mention peace once. He doubled down on a single word: victory. The ghost drone attack. The timing of Russia's latest claim is suspicious, to say the least. Moscow alleges that Ukraine launched 91 drones at Putin's personal vacation residence in the Novgorod region. They've used this attack as an immediate excuse to harden their negotiating stance. However, the story is falling apart. The intelligence. The CIA has assessed the attack as a complete fabrication. The witnesses. Local residents near the compound told journalists they heard nothing. No explosions, no sirens, not even a text alert. The motive? By manufacturing a threat to his own home, Putin creates a political out to demand more territory and derail the progress made in Florida. A milestone of blood. To understand why Putin is posturing so hard, you have to look at the calendar. On January 12th, this war will officially last longer than the 1,418 days the Soviet Union fought Nazi Germany in World War II. For a leader who obsesses over history, surpassing the length of the Great Patriotic War without a victory is a psychological disaster. To keep the gears turning, Russia is currently losing about 1,000 soldiers per day, replacing them by recruiting 50,000 to 60,000 new troops every single month. Inside the Mar-a-Lago negotiations. While the meat grinder continues, the diplomatic push is real. On December 28th, Zelensky met with Trump in Florida for nearly 3 hours. The 20-point peace plan includes security. U.S.-Ukraine security guarantees are reportedly 100% locked in. Energy. A proposal for the U.S. and Ukraine to jointly operate the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, splitting the power. The sticking point, the Donbass. Russia wants it all. Ukraine says any land concessions require a national referendum. Trump's posture has shifted significantly in the last 72 hours. While he initially seemed to believe Putin's claims about the drone attack, he has since shared reports suggesting that Putin's bluster is the primary obstacle to peace. The hidden reality of the Russian front? The war is being fought on the backs of Russia's rural poor. Data shows that 67% of the Russian dead come from small towns with fewer than 100,000 people. Regions like Bashkortostan are suffering catastrophic losses, while the elites in Moscow, a city of 13 million, remain relatively untouched. This rural purge allows Putin to keep the war going without sparking a revolution in the capital. The verdict: peace or theater? We are at a crossroads. We have a 20-point peace plan that is 90% there, but we also have a Russian regime preparing its people for a long war and near victory. Putin's New Year's address wasn't aimed at the negotiating table. It was aimed at his own people to ensure they stay in the fight. He is betting that he can outlast Western patience, even if it costs him another million men. The question for 2026 isn't just whether a deal can be signed, but whether Putin actually wants peace on any terms that leave Ukraine as a sovereign nation. Right now, it looks like elaborate theater designed to mask a much darker reality. Putin's New Year address was not aimed at Washington. It wasn't aimed at Kiev. It wasn't even aimed at European leaders. It was aimed at the Russian people. Standing in a black coat, speaking about destiny and unity, Putin addressed soldiers directly. You have taken on the responsibility to fight for your native land, for truth and justice. Millions of people across Russia are with you on this New Year's night. And then came the key line: we believe in you and our victory. There was no mention of peace talks, no reference to negotiations in Florida, no acknowledgement that a deal might be close, just victory. Former President Dmitry Medvedev reinforced the message hours later, declaring, "I sincerely believe that victory is near, our great and invincible Russia." This is not the language of a government preparing its population for compromise. This is the language of a regime preparing them for endurance. And context matters here, because Russia is approaching a deeply uncomfortable historical milestone. On January 12th, Russia's invasion of Ukraine will surpass 1,418 days, the exact length of the Soviet Union's fight against Nazi Germany in World War II. The Great Patriotic War is sacred in Russian memory. It defines national identity. It is taught as a story of unity, sacrifice, and ultimate triumph. Putin's war is about to exceed it. And unlike World War II, this war is not existential in the same sense. Russia was not invaded. Moscow was not threatened with annihilation. This was a war of choice. By February 24th, the conflict enters its 4th year, and the costs are staggering. Western intelligence agencies now converge around a brutal estimate: 900,000 to 1.1 million total Russian casualties, up to 250,000 killed, hundreds of thousands permanently wounded. An independent analysis found that Russia has lost more soldiers in Ukraine than in all Russian and Soviet wars combined since World War II, including Afghanistan and both Chechen wars, and the losses are accelerating. In 2025 alone, Russian casualties increased by 60%. Over 100,000 Russian soldiers were killed in a single year, yet Russia continues recruiting 50,000 to 60,000 troops every month. This is the defining paradox of the war. Catastrophic losses, sustained indefinitely. How? By drawing disproportionately from prisons, poor regions, ethnic minorities, and rural settlements. Verified counts show that 67% of confirmed Russian dead came from towns with fewer than 100,000 people. Moscow, a city of 13 million, has suffered fewer deaths than Bashkortostan, a region with a third of the population. The burden is not shared equally. Ukraine's losses are also devastating. 60,000 to 100,000 killed total casualties, approaching 400,000. Nearly 11 million displaced entire cities erased, energy infrastructure crippled, 80% of thermal power generation destroyed, and civilian casualties are rising, not falling. Against this backdrop, Zelensky arrived in Florida on December 28th, just hours after Kiev endured another massive Russian assault. Over 500 drones and 40 missiles in a single night. That's the reality he flew in from. At Mar-a-Lago, Zelensky and Trump met for nearly 3 hours. When they emerged, the tone was unexpectedly optimistic. Trump called it a terrific meeting. He said 95% of the issues needed to end the war had been addressed. But here's the part that raised alarms. Before meeting Zelensky, Trump spent over 2 hours on the phone with Putin. Afterward, he called Putin again, and during those calls, Putin reportedly raised the alleged drone attack. Trump initially believed him. He told reporters he was very angry. Then the CIA briefed him. By Wednesday, Trump's posture had shifted dramatically. He shared content suggesting Russia, not Ukraine, was standing in the way of peace, that pivot matters. According to Ukrainian officials, a 20-point peace framework is on the table. U.S.-Ukraine security guarantees 100% agreed military arrangements, 100% agreed European security involvement, nearly finalized. The sticking point is territory, specifically the Donbas. Russia demands all of Donetsk and Luhansk, not just the areas it occupies. It wants international recognition of Crimea, guarantees Ukraine will never join NATO, sanctions lifted, and Ukraine's military permanently weakened. These are not compromise positions. Ukraine, for its part, insists that any territorial concessions require a referendum as mandated by its constitution. Polling shows Ukrainians support peace, but not surrender. Why Putin doesn't want peace yet? From Putin's perspective, time may be on his side. Russia is making slow but steady gains, around 176 square miles per month. Ukrainian defenses are under pressure. Pokrovsk has nearly fallen. Western support debates are intensifying. Domestically, Putin faces no meaningful opposition. Media is controlled, protest is criminalized. The economy has adapted to sanctions. Most importantly, Putin has tied his legacy to this war. Walking away without something he can frame as victory would be catastrophic, not just politically, but personally. That's why the fabricated drone attack matters so much. It provides cover. It creates justification. It allows Putin to appear engaged while hardening his position. It's diplomatic theater. January negotiations will continue. Trump wants a deal. Zelensky needs relief. Europe wants stability. But the fundamental question remains unanswered. What does victory actually mean? 1 million casualties. Millions displaced. Cities destroyed. Generations scarred. At what point does winning become indistinguishable from catastrophe? Putin's New Year message was not a signal of confidence. It was a signal of commitment. Commitment to a long war, sold to the Russian people as destiny. Whether Trump can break through that wall remains uncertain. He has leverage. Sanctions bite. Casualties mount. Economic strain is real, but Putin has shown a willingness to absorb immense pain in pursuit of his goals. As 2026 begins, the world is watching a conflict where peace is technically close, but politically distant. And the next few weeks may determine whether diplomacy breaks through, or whether the meat grinder claims another year. Putin says he believes in victory, but victory for whom, and at what cost? That's the question hanging over this war as it enters its 4th year. And it's the question that may define not just Ukraine's future, but Europe's, and the global order for decades to come. Why the war continues, power, time, and the illusion of negotiation. Wars usually end for one of 3 reasons. One side wins outright, both sides collapse, or the cost becomes unbearable. None of those conditions exist in Ukraine. That's why, despite diplomacy, summits, phone calls, and peace frameworks, this war keeps grinding forward. And that's why Vladimir Putin's New Year message matters far more than it appeared on the surface. Because it wasn't about victory. It was about time. The biggest mistake Western observers keep making is assuming this war is being fought on the same timeline by both sides. It isn't. Ukraine is fighting for survival. Europe is fighting for stability. The United States is fighting for resolution. Putin is fighting for endurance. That difference explains almost everything we're seeing right now. When news broke that peace talks were 90% complete, it triggered hope. But negotiations don't mean the same thing to authoritarian regimes as they do to democracies. In democratic systems, negotiations are about ending conflict. In authoritarian systems, negotiations are often about buying time, managing pressure, testing opponents, shaping narratives. Putin has negotiated throughout this war without ever intending to stop it. He negotiated during Minsk. He negotiated before the invasion. He negotiated while massing troops. Negotiation, for the Kremlin, is a tool, not a destination. That's why Putin's New Year's speech wasn't surprising. It was clarifying. He didn't talk about peace because peace isn't the objective yet. He talked about unity, sacrifice, destiny, and victory. Not because victory is imminent, but because sustaining belief is essential. Authoritarian systems don't collapse from military defeat first. They collapse when the population stops believing the sacrifice is justified. Putin's speech was about preventing that. Why the drone story matters. Now, let's talk about the alleged drone attack. Whether or not every detail is fabricated almost doesn't matter. What matters is why the story exists. The purpose wasn't military. The purpose wasn't defensive. The purpose was narrative control. The Kremlin needed a reason to explain why negotiations would slow, stall, or harden. Without admitting that compromise was never the goal, the alleged attack provided that reason. It reframed Russia not as the party refusing peace, but as the party responding to provocation. That's classic Kremlin logic. Time is the weapon. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Putin doesn't need to win quickly. He needs to avoid losing. Every month that passes, Western unity frays, Ukrainian manpower shrinks, European politics destabilize, election cycles intervene, attention shifts elsewhere. Russia, by contrast, is structured for long attrition. Its economy has been reoriented. Its repression apparatus is intact. Its casualty tolerance is brutally high. The war doesn't have to be popular. It just has to be manageable. Why casualties don't change the calculus? 1 million casualties would end most wars. It hasn't ended this one. Why? Because casualties don't threaten Putin's power. They're geographically distant. They're socially isolated. They're politically contained. The sons of Moscow's elite are not dying in trenches. The losses fall on regions with limited political leverage. From the Kremlin's perspective, the system is functioning as designed. That's morally horrifying, but strategically coherent. Ukraine's dilemma. Ukraine faces the opposite problem. Every month of war drains manpower, damages infrastructure, erodes demographics, increases dependence on allies. Ukraine cannot outlast Russia in a pure war of attrition. That's why Kiev wants guarantees. That's why it wants security frameworks. That's why it engages in negotiations. But wanting peace does not mean accepting surrender, and that's the deadlock. Territory is not the core issue. Despite all the attention on maps and borders, territory is not the real issue. The real issue is sovereignty. Russia doesn't just want land, it wants leverage, it wants limitation, it wants Ukraine unable to act independently. Any deal that leaves Ukraine secure, armed, and aligned with the West is, from Moscow's perspective, a failure, regardless of borders. That's why demands escalate. That's why concessions are one-sided. That's why negotiations stall at the final stage. Why Trump matters. And why he may not be enough. Donald Trump introduces unpredictability into this equation. That's both his strength and his limitation. Putin respects leverage. He probes uncertainty. He tests resolve. Trump can apply pressure in ways others can't. Economically, rhetorically, personally. But even Trump cannot change one fundamental reality. Putin believes losing Ukraine would unravel everything he has built. That belief narrows the space for compromise to almost nothing. What Putin is actually waiting for. Putin isn't waiting for a battlefield breakthrough. He's waiting for external change. A shift in US politics, a fracture in NATO, a crisis elsewhere, a reduction in Western capacity. History tells him time eventually produces these moments. His strategy assumes that Ukraine's coalition weakens before Russia's system does. That's the bet. Why 2026 is dangerous. The longer this war lasts, the more dangerous it becomes, not just for Ukraine, but globally. Prolonged wars normalize escalation. They desensitize decision makers. They reduce red lines. What begins as attrition can drift into desperation. And desperation is where mistakes happen. Conclusion: the war behind the war. This conflict isn't just about tanks and territory. It's about whose system breaks first. Ukraine's open, democratic, human system, or Russia's closed, coercive, sacrificial one. Putin's New Year message wasn't a declaration of imminent victory. It was a declaration of intent to continue. And until that intent changes, not rhetorically, but structurally, peace will remain something discussed abroad and deferred at home. That's the reality as 2026 begins, not a lack of diplomacy, but a lack of shared incentives to end the war.